everybody who is joining us for this discussion today. After a brief discussion this morning, after I think all of us had absorbed the announcement by Liz Truss yesterday in relation to the Gender Recognition Act, and after we'd absorbed it, just how did we feel about this? And we just felt at GenderGP it was something we should respond to, because we do believe some people will have been impacted, as I know I have, and I'm sure other people have. Today joining me, we have got Victoria and we've got Helen, who I'm sure many people will know if you are GenderGP followers. So welcome, and hopefully we can have a interesting discussion at least, and give some insight into how it is impacting the trans community.
Thanks, Marianne. So Marianne, what is it? So for people who are not necessarily really deeply involved in it, what was the discussion? What was the consultation? How long has it been going on for, and what were we hoping for?
Basically, my understanding was, I think it was in 2015, there was a Women's Equality Committee had done a report, and they said the treatment of transgender people, certainly within the NHS, as we all know, and as is well documented, was well below par, putting it mildly. And what they recommended was that we should have an overall, do a consultation, and they're going to overhaul the system. And I think the hope was to upgrade the Gender Recognition Act 2004, which is the process of getting a gender recognition certificate, whereby which we can change our birth certificate. And I think what happened yesterday, that the announcement, and again, I'm not political, I'm not going to try and interpret all the words, nothing's changed. And it's almost like they've offered very, very little. They've kind of did enough. In other words, they wanted us to be thankful that they haven't rolled anything back. So they put the word out. I think in August there was going to be an announcement. They were going to roll back. I wasn't going to be allowed to use the ladies' toilets and that kind of thing. And then I felt that the announcement yesterday was that, but graciously, we're not going to do that, but we're going to do nothing else. And I think that was kind of what the upshot was yesterday. I don't know if you'd agree with me, Victoria.
Yeah, I think so, Marianne. You have missed one thing. They did change one thing, and that they moved the process for applying for a gender recognition certificate online. So that's helpful. Yeah. And I think the price was reduced. The £140 fee has gone down, but I'm not sure what it's gone down to. But I think it's pretty obvious they weren't the issues with the system as it stood. So yeah, a whole lot of, not a lot, I suppose.
So they were talking about 80% of the people that they asked. The consultation attracted, I'm talking from Pink News here. So the consultation attracted more than 108,000 responses, so a really good response. And 80% of people were in favour of demedicalising the process of obtaining a gender recognition certificate. Seeing as I'm medical, I'm going to just give my 2 pennies worth here. So basically, to get a gender recognition certificate, which from what I've seen from people who I know have had one, is actually a very big moment in your life. It's the moment where you can, if you feel you need to, have a piece of paper which allows your birth certificate to be changed, so that you were not, it was completely wrong, that birth certificate, when it was written. You were not male or female at birth. Your gender is this, as per stated by this legal document, the gender recognition certificate. And that's a big moment, so I understand, from the community in someone's gender journey. There's a lot of talk that is a very medicalized process. So I have to get 2 doctors' reports. You're not allowed to say, I am female or I am male. You have to get 2 doctors in order to validate your gender, to say, I have assessed Victoria or Marianne, and I concur that they are indeed female, and I allow them and permit them to achieve this certificate. And my medical assessment is that they are not barking mad in doing this. And that's the issue in a very, I feel, in a very basic level. So what were you hoping for as two trans women joining me today? What were you hoping for? What if you were writing the rule book, what medical input would you want, if any, in order for you to be able to say to the world, you got my gender wrong at birth, can you correct it, please?
I think there's a few things, but I think one of the things to mention just on top of that before we get into it is actually it's not just your birth certificate. I feel like there's a lot of emphasis put on that, but obviously my birth certificate doesn't come into play. I don't use it for really anything. It's not a, you know, a verified form of ID or anything like that, but actually for death certificates and marriages as well, this is where it sort of comes into play, and that does directly affect my life going forwards. So it's a big deal to have this certificate. In terms of what we were expecting, gosh, I don't know. That's a loaded question, isn't it? But what we were hoping for was some form of self-ID. There's zero reason for that. As you were pointing out, Helen, the process is ridiculous, and I'm going through that process myself at this time. And yeah, I transitioned a couple of years ago, been on medication for a long time. Why now should I then have to prove something that has actually been in existence for some years in practice? So just to eliminate that, make that process easier and based on us rather than anything else, I suppose.
I think with the downgrade of gender dysphoria is no longer classified as a mental health issue. And I think that means that actually somebody that wants to self-ID shouldn't have to speak to a psychiatrist or a medical practitioner. I don't know about you, Victoria, you know, this debate was about self-ID. They talk about self-ID that somebody can go, oh, I'm trans, or I'm a woman, and it isn't. What self-ID actually meant was I didn't have to rely on somebody else to tell me who I was. That's what we mean by self-ID. It doesn't mean to say that anybody, you know, just claims a status and therefore it makes it that status. What I was hoping for was it was no more complex than applying for a passport. Simple as that. You know, you can't just go and get a passport. You do have to get somebody that knows you and is a qualified professional of some sort. You know, it could be your GP, but it could also be a solicitor or a family friend. You know, but I don't think it would. I was hoping it would be no more difficult than getting a passport. But actually, there is some onus on anybody that's supporting you doing it, so that, you know, if somebody was going to do this for criminal gain, I can't imagine what that would be. But if they were doing it for criminal gain, that, you know, when they looked at the application, if the person that had signed it didn't know them and, you know, hadn't done it in good faith, then you know, that would be breaking the law. But I genuinely thought it could just be as simple as getting a passport. Something I did want to say as well, there's one bit we haven't discussed here. It's still in the application that if your spouse is not supportive of you getting a gender recognition certificate, they can stop you. You know, this is the level of control over your life. So, yeah, and we didn't get it. If I'm honest with you, we can talk about what we hoped for, and we can talk about what they've done. But what actually I think made it emotive for me was last night, because I was working in the morning and I was on a course in the afternoon. So I didn't really pick up on it till I went to bed. And as you do, you went to bed and started reading my phone, and I just found a little article. There was no headlines. There was no great fanfare. Bear in mind, I'm all over counselling, Facebook pages, LGBT pages, trans groups. And I just found this link and I read it. And I just started to feel really down and really upset, because I just thought, what's it all been for? That's what, you know, that last 5 years, the abuse that our community's taken, and for what? And I was really disappointed that there wasn't more outrage.
Same, absolutely, 100%. But I think again, it's part of, we've mentioned it briefly, is there's almost a bit of an incorrect sigh of relief, it seems, because we're not being hung. It seems like that's the positive, you know, and so yeah, I think it's a slightly confused area because of that, because yeah, we are slightly grateful that it hasn't got substantially worse, but actually in not moving forwards really at all, it has got worse. You talk about, you know, the cost of this, Marianne, but actually those 4 years, there's been an enormous cost to the trans community in terms of levels of abuse and campaigns that have sprung up. I mentioned this morning to a colleague about the 3 weekends I lost in removing, you know, anti-trans stickers from my seafront. That just wouldn't have been there without this. It's all of that combined. It's had a huge impact.
I think on the trans community as well, the silence was deafening, and it still is. I just before we came onto this discussion, I just thought I'll just have a scout through. Somebody must have said something somewhere. And I think you're right, it is a sigh of relief, but I also think we've been silenced because there's a flip side to this, that it's almost been a game of winners and losers. And I think everybody's worried that there's a side that's won and there's a side that's lost, and we probably aren't sure. You know, it's not even a score draw, is it? And what we don't want to do is show weakness to the enemy type of thing. So we'll keep quiet. We won't let them know how we feel. And I think coming back to what disappointed me, or what upset me last night, was I didn't want the outrage to be from the trans community. I think I wanted family, friends. I wanted the allies, the people that will display the trans flag to promote their business, that talk about an inclusive environment. That's what I wanted. That was their moment. And I think I spoke this morning about, I wanted time to be mad. I wanted to be able to be angry. I didn't want to go on in front of all the people that think they've won and be mad. I just wanted my allies to be mad and show support, and wanted that arm around my shoulder this morning just to say, it'll be okay, and that be angry, you know, just allow yourself to grieve, allow yourself to take this moment, because whatever, this is not the end of it. We've now got to prepare for another 10 years, because probably this won't get debated for another 10 years, but we've got to get ready for that 10 years. And we can't do it if we just internalize all of this. It's the councillor coming out to me, but it's really important that we don't internalize this. And we need our allies that now to be caring for us, that if you know a trans person, just ask them if they're okay. Allow them to be upset, allow them to be angry, and don't judge them for that. And then give us an appropriate amount of time, and then we'll be back on the front line fighting again.
Yeah, I agree. I think one of the positives to take out of it, Marianne, as Helen was saying when she was giving us some stats, was that those supporters are there. You know, this outcome is not the one that everyone was looking for, but actually, and why it was slightly controversial was that the sort of stats showed that those supporters were there. Most people didn't have any issues with it. We're all in support of it. So they're there, but we could maybe do with a bit more of a voice, I suppose. We need them. I think that's the thing. As with so many people being asked to talk about these sorts of things, there's simply not enough trans people if we're asking everybody, and there never really can be. And so that voice is incredibly important. But not just ours, you know, we need allies more than ever.
I was going to say no.
Don't fight, please.
I was just going to correct you, Victoria. That was a whole. It's not slightly controversial. It's outrageous.
Yes.
We've got to stop talking this language of this is people's lives. It's our existence. When I talk about the gender recognition certificate, if I die today, I never existed. There'll be a record of this boy that was born, that lived so long, end of, and that, it's an insult to me, but it's an insult to my family as well. It's an insult to those that care about me. So yeah, you know, there's nothing sorry about this, but there's nothing slightly controversial. This is,
you're absolutely
awful.
right.
I'm trying not to swear now. It's awful. And I think we've got to remember that. And that's what the allies need to start and realize. This isn't a game of turfs against the trans community. This is an affront to our society. It's an affront to how we treat the minorities. So yeah, it's an outrage. I'll let you go now, Helen.
I wanted to say,
I'm not crying, by the way. So
I wanted to say earlier that my arm is firmly around your shoulders, both of you, and my flag is flying very, very high. I'm wondering, like, the decision makers. So we talk about the community and the respondents. So they did the right thing. They asked the world what the opinion was, and they got the feedback, a good feedback. And a lot of people were saying that it wasn't the fact that there was a bit of paper application process that needs to change to an online process. That's nothing to do with it. It was about the bureaucracy and the procedure involved with it. Now, who is making those decisions? Who was on the panel making the decisions? What colour were they? What gender were they? What identity were they assigned at birth? And these are the really important questions. And this is what worries me about decisions that are being made on your lives, on my life, as somebody who is an ally of the transgender community. Who is making these decisions? Have we got proper trans representation on all of these very, very important panels that are making big decisions about people's lives? Do we know that? Do we know who's on these panels?
I haven't got
we guess?
We can guess.
We can guess. And that is really what has got to change. The voice of the we haven't got enough trans people speaking up, and we haven't got enough trans people sitting in important seats, in decision-making seats. And that is something really, really important. And it's something that you were talking about, Marianne. It's all very well having the policy or saying our department has a trans flag badge that you can wear if you support trans people. Here is our trans inclusive policy. Here is the flag that we put up on trans recognition days. Actually, how does it translate into real life? And that's what we've got. That's what we've got to do. And also, who are we going to allow to influence the decision makers? When is it time for this debate to be over? And we don't accept debate about this anymore. And these are the real core fundamentals that keep coming up again and again, whichever aspect of trans identity and trans inclusion, trans equality that we're talking about. These are common themes that keep coming up again and again and again, aren't they? And that's the root of it that has to change.
It's been a, how can I say, it's been a bloody battle, hasn't it? You know, we shouldn't forget that. And you know, when we talk about this debate, it was supposed to be a consultation, and it was about trans people. It was about, we talk about equal rights. You know, if something affects us, it affects everybody. And it was a consultation to see how we could improve the lives of trans people. And somewhere in that consultation, it allowed other voices to come in. I don't know about you, Victoria, but you know, I would fight for everybody's rights. I might not always like who I'm fighting with, but you know, I'd hate to think we weren't on a level playing field. And when this consultation came in, it wasn't a debate. It was, we've got to go out, we've got to listen, and we've got to bring the information, and we've got to put a package together. And suddenly all these other voices came into it. And actually the trans people were drowned out. You know, if I was to use a metaphor, it was like the Somme. We were just being bombarded verbally everywhere you couldn't well, even now we cannot open our social media without being attacked. And yeah, it was never a debate. It was never a debate, it was a consultation, and it was allowed to become a debate.
It was scary to comment on. I think that's the thing. It's like, you know, we've said here, but it's hard to get involved with when you're vulnerable, when you're part of that demographic. Then speaking up is, you know, on the one hand, one thing you need to be doing, and on the other hand, just you make yourself at so much risk with the way the environment has sort of skewed itself. Did we see any positive stories or news stories or anything about any of this while it was going on? Every single thing was just constant. This is a problem. Look out for this. Watch out for that. And there was no escaping any of that. So I you know, it's not pleasant looking at social media. It hasn't been for a long time, as you say, Marianne. But nice.
In terms of what should happen going forward, I think it's time that we had a more trans representation in politics. That without question, and you know, I'm not suggesting for a minute we've got to default to a trans prime minister at this stage, but just to have somebody in politics, or a fair representation of us in politics across all parties, would be a really good start. That there are some role models, political role models, starting to emerge. I did watch Paris Lee's, she was on Question Time, and she was fantastic, and it was interesting because they brought up the debate, and as soon as she talked, it was the end of the debate. You can't tell a trans woman that she's a predator or, you know, invading women's spaces, not one that looks as gorgeous as Paris Lee's. Do you know what I mean? It just ended the debate. So what we need to do is stop sidelining these voices. You know, we've got to start allowing them into the political arena. We've definitely got to see that moving forward.
I think we're
So
trying.
we've got a few things. We've got a few things, haven't we? We've got this idea that we do not need to. I strongly feel that we do not need a medical person to validate your gender and to say what gender you are. That just needs to be completely and utterly scrapped. We need to end this debate about whether a trans woman is a woman or not. That debate is over, and of course opposite a trans masculine person is a man, and that debate needs to be finished and over. And then now we've done that bit, done, right? Now we need to start rewriting the policies and rewriting the rule books and rewriting the law books, because some of the valid arguments that I have heard are things like, okay, what if you are in a male-female marriage and you change your gender legally by certificate and process from man to woman, and then that means that you are then in a same-sex marriage. So there are issues, legal issues, not personal issues, but legal issues about that. There are different laws. On another example, there are different laws for women in terms of pension, or, you know, those kind of things. There are currently different laws. There are different words on the mother and father on a birth certificate, for example. So there are issues there. If we were just allowed to go tick, I'm changing from man to woman on this legal stuff. So somebody needs to be active in law, getting all that ready, because one day the Gender Recognition Act will be that trans people, of course, you can self-identify and we can correct your birth certificate to make it correct because we got it wrong. But what we need to be doing in the background is changing those laws that are currently posing kind of credible arguments, I would say, you know, and that needs to be sorted out. I don't know what you ladies think of that.
I assume we must already have all of those in place for when we get the certificates anyway. It just takes a hell of a lot longer. So in my mind, it shouldn't be impossible. But hey, I'll work a few extra hours if it'll do it. Let's just get it done.
My answer really to that is that does this not just shine a spotlight on the gender equality? That why should it be so complicated? in truth, that if all things were equal, then nothing changes, does it? If we value same-sex marriage equally, if the, you know, pensions are equally divvied up, you know, it's just, this is where I say, if we get this right, it's going to make equality across all genders better. It's got to do. I just want to raise something else, like going off on a slight tangent. We've not even mentioned non-binary because they've been wiped out, I think.
I was going to say, nor did they.
Yeah. You know, we can, the children, you know, there's just so much that's just been left omitted. And, you know, it's like we just want to sweep it under the carpet now. It's devastating.
It's that spotlight again, Marianne. It's that, you know, people they aren't aware. There's so many, I feel like most of the people I speak to, most of my cis friends who are very supportive, just aren't aware. They just don't know of any of these circumstances. We were talking about the spousal agreement thing this morning to a friend, and she was just flabbergasted by it, as most people would be, as I would hope everyone would be. But it's again that just sort of lack of knowledge across all of these areas.
If we talk about this on a personal level, I think anybody would be outraged. You know, if somebody said, oh, I can't do this because I need permission from my spouse, even if you're not living together, or, you know, I've got to go and see a psychiatrist. Why, are you mad? No, apparently they know better than I do. Any right-thinking person will be outraged.
That also includes trans people. It's not often something you do find out a little later into the process. You know, I'm not necessarily, you know, you won't know necessarily from day one what the legal aspects of everything are, but once you actually start to transition, if that's the route that you're going, then a lot of these can come as shocks even to yourself of, oh, hang on, we've just lost a bunch of rights in just finding this. So it's messy, it's not good. Yeah.
And, you know, don't misunderstand me either. You know, anything worth fighting for is worth fighting. Do you know what I mean? And we have had our fight. And I think if it had moved forward a substantial amount, we may be having a slightly different conversation. We may not have got everything we wanted, but, you know, it would have felt, well, actually the last 5 years just haven't been wasted. And we could argue they haven't been wasted, because one of the things I've been saying recently is that, you know, my God, at least people are talking about it, because there was a time when I was younger when nobody talked about anything to do with trans. Yeah. But it just felt yesterday, I think, just to put this into context, you know, the magnitude of that announcement yesterday, which was treated, I was going to use the metaphor, it felt like it was a little drop in a big pond, but the ripple effects are going to just go on and on and on. That it wasn't, you know, it was hidden behind the next COVID announcement, but it was massive considering how the last 5 years have been.
I think you're right as well, Marianne, both of you, about the, you know, the lack of representation of non-binary and the other genders and people who don't have any gender at all in this. It kind of feels to me like, well, you'd have been lucky if just the trans women or just the trans men would have had it, because at least that's a bit easy, but never mind all those others, kind of thing. And that's what it feels like. You know, count yourselves lucky that even you lot are being, you know, considered here. And I'm looking forward to our youth, the transgender youth of today, coming forward, because I don't think they're going to be quite so quiet and accepting of this bad treatment. And they are shouting very loudly in their identities when they're at university, saying, look at me, this is me, I'm not doing binary gender identity, we're doing, this is me exploring, this is me showing you that there is no binary. And I'm really looking forward to their young voices coming through in all of this, sitting on panels, being influential in policy making and in campaigning, and they're going to have a very loud voice, I hope.
Absolutely, I 100% agree with that. And in turn as well, their peers, or you know, exposed to all this, that that sort of next movement is the exciting one, I suppose. I mean, I feel a bit sad to have missed some of it.
You're a bit old, Victoria.
I feel privileged to be witnessing it, I have to say.
Yes.
Do you know what I mean? There was a time I thought nothing's ever going to change. So, you know, on one hand, you know, I think we need to take stock. I think we all need, I think all trans people, and there'll be those, some listening to this going, oh, what's she beating on about? Trust me, you know, it's impacted us all a little bit, and we can internalize that. We can try and pretend everything's okay. I think we've definitely got to take a little bit of stock here. I don't want to say, you know, keep it from the kids. You know, I think I'm hoping that the kids are going to be the ones that start shouting the loudest next. But I do think we need to just take just a little bit of time, allow ourselves to be angry, you know, go through the grief process a little bit, then pick ourselves up and come back stronger than ever. It's got to do.
We have. We've run out of time now, and although we could talk forever, I know that it has impacted the community, and I think they've been very silent but brave in taking this knockback. But from what I've seen, people will be coming back, and they will be going, hey, hang on a minute, that just ain't right, that just ain't fair. And thank you for sharing your thoughts today, Victoria and Marianne, with us and the world about how you felt about it. And I'm sorry it wasn't a better outcome for you.
Next time.
Next time. Bye-bye.
Thanks.